Commander Daxon Vire strode across the control deck of the Iron Wraith, each bootstep echoing against the warped alloy beneath him. The floor groaned like it resented the weight of memory. Overhead, exposed circuits sparked dimly, while corroded panels flaked rust like old wounds peeling open. The lights twitched in protest, alive but barely. To an outsider, the vessel looked like a dying relic, but Daxon knew better. This was camouflage, perfected through ruin. Commander, signatures approaching, 12 vessels, confirmed. Reported Kai Ven from the ops terminal. Barely 20. Kai had quicksilver reflexes and a mind wired for tension. His short, dark hair hung low over narrowed eyes as he scanned the starfield again. He'd been tracking the void for hours without blinking. Daxon shifted his gaze to the central holo display. 12 luminous orbs cut through the velvet dark, bearing down on the civilian sanctuary known as Bastion's Reach. Each blip pulsed with menace. All were Tevrithi war cruisers. The Tevrith considered themselves heirs of the stars, masters of all they surveyed. Their ships were hauntingly beautiful, translucent, serpentine hulls that shimmered like frozen flame. Impossibly elegant, unforgivingly lethal. "They're Leviathans," murmured Sarah Thorne from the NAV console. Her voice was a still lake, but Daxon caught the tremor beneath the surface. Petite and sharp-eyed, her platinum braid hung like a wire pulled taut. "The lead vessel is easily triple our size." Daxon nodded. It tracked. The Tevrith never advanced in silence. They flaunted their dominance with theatrical force. Fear was their opening salvo. "Rhea, what's our internal readout?" he asked. Chief Systems Officer Rhea Maddox didn't look up. Tall, flame-haired, and perpetually grease-streaked, she worked with mechanical grace. The grit on her hands never dulled the fire in her eyes. "All systems online and synchronized," she replied, running like a dream painted in rust. Daxon cracked a rare grin. Rhea was the kind of genius who could make trash sing opera, or silence a symphony with one wrench twist. And today, subtle misdirection was everything. "Talon, are the claws primed?" Weapons Tech Talon Royce, a mountain of muscle and shadow, nodded once. The former frontline enforcer now manned their arsenal with icy precision. Charged and locked, awaiting orders. The display blinked. An image filled the screen, obsidian skin for glittering eyes and a maw of serrated fangs. The broadcast had begun. "I am High Marshal Drexer of the Tevrithi Dominion," the alien intoned, his voice a mechanical snarl scraping through steel. "By decree of the Ontherian Dominion, your world now falls under our reign. Surrender immediately. Any defiance will be met with obliteration." Daxon stepped forward, jaw set like carved stone. "This is Commander Daxon Vire of the Terran Vanguard. This star system is sovereign ground. Withdraw or be repelled." The alien's quad eyes narrowed, scanning Daxon and the battered control room beyond. Then came a sound, low at first, then rising. Laughter. Cold, guttural, inhuman. It crawled up the spine of everyone on deck. "Vanguard," sneered Drexer, still chuckling. "Is this theater? That derelict? You expect us to fear that?" Snickers erupted behind him. Other Ontherian officers amused by the sight. "Observe that disgraceful construct," another voice rasped. "It's disintegrating before our eyes." "I spy fractures in the plating from here," mocked a second. "Let it drift. We need not waste ammunition." A third chimed in, dry with contempt. "It might implode before we get a shot off." Drexer's laugh turned savage. "No, we shall demonstrate what awaits the defiant. Shatter this, refuse barge. Let every Terran witness the futility of resistance." Daxon didn't flinch. On the surface, he was carved from ice. But inside, he was thrilled. The Ontherians had taken a bait. They looked upon his vessel and saw decay. They saw desperation. They saw a weak, broken species clutching at survival. He wanted them to see that. "Lyric, are you catching all of this?" Daxon murmured under his breath. Lieutenant Lyric Hale nodded without turning. thin-framed, analytical, always half-buried in his holoscreens. He was a master of digital reconnaissance, capturing everything: commander, ship positions, armament signatures, structural vulnerabilities. They're not shielding. They're advancing carelessly. Daxon scanned his team. Sarah monitored their paths, hands gliding over flight controls. Rhea ran quiet diagnostics, triple-checking cloak subsystems. Talon had already primed their hidden cannons. And Lyric? Lyric was collecting their enemy's secrets like pearls on a wire. 2 years. That's how long they drilled for this single moment. The vessel? Far from collapsing. The Iron Wraith was the Terran Alliance's most advanced stealth warship. Engineered to masquerade as a relic, it played the part perfectly. Rusted facade, flickering lights, loose plating, a mask of weakness. Commander, intercept group inbound. 3 cruisers detaching from a formation, Sarah reported. The rest continued toward Bastion's reach. Daxon's lips curved slightly. Right on schedule. The trio of Ontherian ships glided toward them like predators performing a ballet. Their crystalline architecture sparkled beneath starlight, flawless and cold. Movement seamless, beautiful and merciless. Each could erase an entire city in one pulse. But Daxon didn't blink. His eyes locked on the screen, and his voice lowered to a whisper meant only for his crew. Showtime. One last check, Daxon said, voice low and focused. Are we locked in? Standing by, Commander, came the united chorus from his crew. Daxon settled into his command seat. The leather was cracked and faded. It seems patched with old repairs, like the rest of the bridge. But it cradled him like an old friend. This chair had weathered countless storms with him, and would face one more today. Rhea, drop our energy output. Make us look like we're bleeding dry. Already draining the core feed, she replied. At her touch, the bridge dimmed further. Screens sputtered and blinked erratically. To anyone watching from afar, the Iron Wraith was dying. Kai, Daxon continued. Send out a distress burst. Let's sell the performance. Kai's fingers flew across his console. Within seconds, a transmission spiraled through the void, pleading for assistance, citing catastrophic failure, masked in fear and desperation. The Ontherians devoured it. They're begging. Drexer sneered aboard his flagship. The Terrans want us to rescue them. How quaint. Shall we lend a hand, High Marshal? One officer chuckled darkly. Oh, absolutely, Drexer replied, lips twisting into a jagged grin. Let's show them mercy. Swift, terminal mercy. The 3 intercepting cruisers closed in, their formation fluid, casual. Their officers were at ease, confident, convinced they were about to swat a crippled gnat. They couldn't see what was coiled inside the shadows. Daxon watched their advance, the corner of his mouth curving into a ghost of a smile. Arrogance was always the first thread to unravel, and the Ontherians had tugged it willingly. Above them, the rest of the Dominion's fleet fanned out across the starfield, a glimmering constellation of destruction. 12 vessels arced like petals from a mechanical bloom, each sculpted from translucent alloys that glowed soft blue under distant suns. Their shields shimmered like woven starlight, faint and beautiful. Weapon banks lined their hulls, each cannon capable of vaporizing a fortress. At the heart of this deadly garden drifted Drexer's flagship, Crown of Embers. It dwarfed every other vessel, a gleaming titan nearly tenfold the size of any Terran warcraft. Its crystal towers clawed into the void like the limbs of some mythic abyssal god. Energy radiated from it in waves, spiking every scanner. By comparison, the Iron Wraith looked like space junk. Dark smoke drifted from ruptured panels. Chunks of armor floated behind it like a broken comet. The ship's nameplate, TSV Revenant, was half obscured, scrawled across stained metal like graffiti on a grave. High Marshal, came a voice from one of the flanking ships, Commander Valix. His transmission buzzed with amusement. Do we really need to fire? That thing looks like it's already lost the will to live. You could sneeze on it and it'd disintegrate. snorted Lieutenant Krell as his eyes danced across the tactical display. Each of his 4 pupils scanned different quadrants of the Terran vessel with mechanical precision. Commander Valix, their core output is pathetic, barely enough to run a food dispenser. He chuckled. I've seen children's holokites with stronger power signatures. Aboard the Revenant, deep within the flickering gloom of the bridge, Rhea Maddox allowed herself a quiet smile. Every spoofed signal she'd coded was performing flawlessly. From fake coolant leaks to phantom hull breaches, the deception was airtight. She turned slightly toward Daxon. They're swallowing it whole, Commander, she whispered. Their optics are telling them exactly what we want. Daxon gave a tiny nod, but kept his expression frozen in neutral ice. Through the viewport, the Ontherian interceptors drifted closer, carving sleek trails of light across the void. 3 cruisers had peeled from a fleet and were now headed straight for them. The remainder continued en route to Bastion's Reach, where over 50,000 Terran settlers held their breath beneath fragile atmospheres. Kai, intercept their closed-channel chatter, Daxon said. Kai's fingers flew. Ontherians still believed their encryption was unbreakable, but Terran decryption tech had advanced in secret and fast. They're laughing, sir, Kai reported, voice low. One just joked about using us for gunnery drills. Another suggested salvaging the Revenant as an artifact, proof primitive creatures once reached orbit. Sarah glanced at her console. Commander, main assault fleet reaches Bastion's orbital grid in 4 hours. Interceptors will enter strike distance in 20. Daxon scanned the faces around him. Every crew member played their role to perfection. From the outside, they looked panicked, grasping at controls, muttering frustrations, sighing in despair. Talon slapped his weapon console, cursing under his breath. Lyric hunched over glitching sensors, shaking his head like a man facing death. But Daxon saw it, the flicker behind their eyes. Excitement. They'd trained for this. Every drill, every scenario, every midnight repair session when systems failed by design. Everything led to now. How long until we can punch full burn? Daxon asked, voice barely above the hum of the dying lights. Half a minute, Rhea answered. Every system's prepped, just waiting on the signal. One switch, and this haunted wreck becomes the apex predator of this sector. Daxon didn't reply. He didn't need to. He just watched as the hunters came closer, unaware they were marching straight into a ghost's jaws. The Ontherian cruisers loomed larger now. Through the viewport, Daxon could make out the intricate etchings carved into their hulls. Ornate, perfect, merciless. Each ship a masterpiece of destruction. Cannons sculpted into the curves like predator claws. Their engines bled trails of azure flame across the void. Commander Vire, came Drexer's voice again, hissing through the comms. Satisfy my curiosity. Why send this embarrassment to confront us? Is your species truly this careless with its own survival? Daxon rose from his seat deliberately, slow and weary, as if each step cost him strength. Hi, Marshal, he said, his voice grave. This is our finest ship. Terran engineering pales beside yours. We know we cannot defeat you, but we had to stand, for our people's sake. That drew howls of laughter across the Ontherian fleet. The finest. Drexer spat. This floating scrapyard is your crown jewel? I almost pity you. A subordinate voice joined in. Why not leave them drifting, sir? Mercy might be more insulting. No, Drexer growled. This will become legend. A symbol. When we tear this relic apart, every Terran world will see resistance as suicide. We crush not just their ship, but their hope. On the Revenant's bridge, Lyric Hale was parsing tactical feeds. What he saw nearly broke his composure. Commander, he said evenly, they're not charging weapons. Minimal shield output. They've completely underestimated us. It's laughable. Daxon's eyes gleamed. Internally, he felt the chill of satisfaction settle into place. The Ontherians were walking into the exact scenario Terran tacticians had engineered. Their arrogance wasn't just expected, It was needed. "Sarah," he said quietly, "alter our vector. Make it seem like a retreat, but guide us right into the strike window." Sarah's hands moved fluidly, redirecting the Revenant into a sloppy, uncoordinated arc, one that appeared to be a desperate retreat. To the Ontherians, it would look pitiful. Too slow. Too panicked. "They're running," laughed Commander Valix. "Look at that pathetic drift. My dead uncle could maneuver better, and he's still buried on Orlon Prime." The three Ontherian ships fanned into a classic kill pattern, forming a wide net to flank and trap. They weren't rushing it. They wanted to enjoy the dismantling, like predators playing with wounded prey. Kai broke in, headset crackling. Interceptions coming in. They're debating how best to end us. One wants to use auxiliary cannons, just to drag it out. Another suggested ramming us straight through the hull. For fun. Daxon clenched his jaw, but kept his tone composed. "Let them argue. In moments," Daxon whispered, "they'll stop laughing." The Ontherian cruisers were now so close. Their surface details shimmered clearly. Serrated gun ports lined their radiant hulls like predator teeth. Dozens of them per ship. Any one could flatten a city. Combined, they could glass a world. Daxon wasn't blinking. His eyes met Rhea's. He gave a single nod. She responded in kind, her fingers resting lightly atop a crimson switch labeled Core Surge. "Talon," Daxon said. "Final check." Talon Royce's fingers slid across his panel with silent precision. The weapon system he'd been struggling with was actually state-of-the-art, Terran ingenuity at its peak. "Locked and ready, Commander," he said. "Say the word." The lead Ontherian vessel now drifted within kilometers, its crystalline body gleaming like a frozen dagger in sunlight. Its captain likely picturing his name etched into victory monuments. Daxon leaned back into the command seat. The time for pretending was done. "Crew," he said, loud and clear, "let's remind our guests what Terrans are made of. Stations to combat readiness. This will be memorable." The enemy ship crept into strike range. Commander Valix lounged in his throne of living crystal, barely watching the Revenant flounder. His crew exchanged jokes. A few even captured images of the Terran vessel, to share later as proof of how laughable this final stand had been. "This is embarrassing," Valix muttered, smirking. "Like vaporizing a nursery." "Shall I engage the primary emitter?" asked his gunner. Valix waved him off lazily. "Use the pulse flickers. Smallest setting. Let's drag this out. They should feel how hopeless they are." On board the Revenant, Daxon monitored their slow drift toward the trap center. His pulse pounded, but his expression never wavered. Everything was unfolding precisely as designed. The Ontherians hadn't even bothered to activate full shielding. Their arrogance ran that deep. "Commander," Sarah said quietly, "we are perfectly aligned." Daxon looked to Rhea. Her hand hovered over the activation switch, eyes alive with fire. "Now," he commanded. Rhea flipped the switch. The transformation was instant. The Revenant, moments ago a floating carcass, roared to life like a resurrected beast. Flickering lights surged into brilliance. Panels of disguised armor snapped into place, sealing former breaches. The once weak engine core erupted with blinding azure flame. Even the hull began to shift, external plates unfolding, revealing hardened weapon mounts and concealed power banks. The illusion was dead. The hunter had awoken. Along the Revenant's reinforced frame, concealed turrets deployed in synchronized rhythm. These weren't crude projectile weapons. The Ontherians had expected rusty cannons and outdated lasers. Instead, they faced a lattice of precision plasma emitters, glowing with blue-white fury. Aboard Valix's cruiser, chaos erupted. Warning klaxons screamed through the bridge. His sensor tech stood frozen, eyes wide in disbelief. "Commander, Terran vessel just spiked, 3,000% in energy output." Valix shot to his feet. "That's impossible. Put it on screen." The hollow viewer shifted. No longer did the Terran ship resemble a salvage wreck. Now it was something else, something lethal. Armor glinted like razor scales. Weapon systems throbbed with power. The Revenant looked like a forged god of metal and fury. Shields. Full power. Arm all weapons. Valix shouted, but he was already too late. Talon Royce had been waiting for this exact instant. 2 years of simulations, drills, and false drills. He pressed the trigger. Main batteries firing. The Revenant's lances tore free, streaks of searing plasma flung at light speed. Not a single one missed. The first beam pierced Valix's flagship just as its shields were halfway online. It cleaved the elegant ship from prow to engine core, glass-like plating shattering under the thermal force. The hull fractured in silence, and then erupted. The explosion seared across space like a newborn sun. Valix and his crew were ash before they could scream. The second cruiser tried to veer off. Sarah Thorne had predicted that. She'd calculated the retreat angle and adjusted their position minutes ago. Talon's follow-up blast was already tracking. The Ontherian captain managed to raise partial shields, but it changed nothing. The plasma lance shredded through like smoke, slicing through reactor coils and command modules. A delayed detonation rocked the sky. The vessel spun once, fractured, then disappeared. The final cruiser, the only one to react with actual urgency, fired. Its captain, Commander Recall, was faster than the rest. He launched a blast from the main cannon, a focused bolt of energy meant to level a city. It struck the Revenant. Nothing happened. The shot vanished against the hull like a ripple on a pond. Impossible. Recall screamed. That hit should have torn them apart. But he hadn't accounted for rheumatics. Her experimental armor didn't just resist damage. It absorbed it, converted it, fed it back into the ship's internal systems. The more they were attacked, the more powerful they became. Talon fired once more. The final cruiser ruptured mid-turn. The explosion cracked open the void. 3 Ontherian warships, masterpieces of destruction, had been reduced to drifting wreckage in under 30 seconds. And the ship they had mocked? The vessel they called a joke? It now stood alone, untouched, glowing like the wrath of a species reborn. The ship they mocked had become the nightmare they never saw coming. Aboard the Crown of Embers, High Marshal Drexer stood frozen, his quad eyes locked on the screen in disbelief. Where once his 3 elite cruisers had flown, there now drifted a burning cloud of twisted debris and molten shards, lit by the dying fire of their own reactors. "Status," he barked, his voice strained. Sir, the Terran vessel, it wasn't what it seemed," stammered his lead analyst. "Sensor readouts confirm a Dread-class warcraft. Energy output far exceeds anything we've encountered." Drexer's face paled. "No. That's not possible. Humanity doesn't possess that technology." But his voice no longer carried the weight of certainty. Doubt had entered his bones. On the Revenant, Daxon Vire rose from his chair. Gone was the illusion of decay. With full power coursing through her veins, the ship now gleamed like a blade pulled from its sheath. The walls hummed with energy. Displays flickered with pinpoint clarity. This was no relic. "Open channel to the Dominion fleet," he said. "Line open," Kai confirmed. Daxon faced the holocom. His voice was steady, calm. But his gaze? It could cut titanium. "High Marshal Drexer," he said coldly, "you once referred to my ship as Refuse." On board the Crown, Drexer watched, and for the first time in his long, ruthless career, he felt it. Fear. The Terran on his screen did not look broken or desperate. He looked like the storm. "You spoke of making an example," Daxon continued. "I couldn't agree more. Lyric," he said without turning. "Broadcast this to every outpost, colony, and vessel in our sector. Let them all see." "Already streaming across all frequencies, Commander," Lyric replied. Sarah checked her display. "Commander, the rest of the Ontherian fleet is adjusting heading. 9 warships. Approaching fast." Daxon's lips curved, but the smile was not warm. It was the smile of a hunter who had drawn his prey into striking distance. "Excellent," he said. "Let them come." Talon report. Talon reviewed his weapons grid. Everything glowed green. Every system hot. Ready for full engagement. "We can burn them all." Daxon returned to his chair, settling in like a king to his throne. Around him, the crew moved with practiced precision. This was no longer a drill. This was the reckoning. The Ontherians had committed a fatal error. They thought humans were primitive, weak, unworthy. They saw the Revenant and laughed. Now they would burn. "All stations," Daxon announced across the internal comms. "Prepare for major engagement. Today we make it known, Earth's legacy will not be dismissed. Today we carve our name into the stars." The remaining Ontherian fleet closed in, shields ablaze, weapons armed, vengeance in their wake. The hardest part was done. The trap had been sprung. And now came the fire. Now came the real show. The remaining 9 Ontherian warships glided across the stars in precise synchrony. Their crystalline armor gleamed with sharpened menace. Around each vessel shimmered layers of protective light, barriers powered by energy reactors tuned to maximum output. This time, they were done underestimating. Every cannon was locked, every shield fully charged, every crew braced for war. High Marshal Drexer stood rigid on the bridge of the Crown of Embers, his 4 eyes narrowed, locked onto the Terran vessel that had just erased 3 of his elite destroyers. His flagship dwarfed the others, a behemoth of spires and weaponry, designed to eradicate cities from orbit. "Combat Array Sigma 7, he barked. "Encircle the Terran ship. No escape. Fire on my command, all of you." The fleet bloomed outward like a deadly star, each ship taking a spoke of the wheel, forming a perfect cage around the Revenant. A simple strategy, overwhelm from every angle. One ship couldn't survive a full ring assault. But Daxon Vire wasn't caught off guard. He watched their elegant trap unfold and smiled. "Sarah," he said softly, "bring us into their center." She blinked. "Commander? That'll put us in the eye of their firepower." "Exactly," he said. "Take us in. Trust me." The Revenant accelerated, gliding straight into the jaws of the formation. To the Ontherian fleet, it looked like panic, like a desperate human trying to flee in the wrong direction. "Pathetic," snorted Commander Novex from one of the cruisers. "They're running straight into our kill zone." Drexer's confidence surged again. "All ships, prepare to unleash. When I give the word, burn them to atoms. Nothing survives that much fire." Aboard the Revenant, Rhea Maddox made her final system adjustments. "Commander, all defense protocols green. Absorption, plating primed and charged." Daxon gave a curt nod. Those plates, Earth's closely guarded miracle tech, converted enemy fire into power. The more damage they took, the stronger the ship became. A gamble, a weapon, a secret. "Lyric," Daxon said, "you tracking their firing solutions?" Lyric's screens glowed as he parsed targeting data from all 9 ships. "Yes, Commander. I've infiltrated their aim logs. When you signal, I can redirect their firing solutions, make them cross-fire into each other." Another surprise the Ontherians didn't see coming. Years of silent warfare had sharpened Terran coding into something lethal. Their enemies thought they were aiming at a single ship, but they were really aiming at each other. Human codebreakers had spent decades reverse engineering Ontherian tech. Years of shadow warfare, of silent prep. Now it was paying off. The Ontherians thought their fire control systems were secure. They were wrong. Lyric controlled them like he was playing an instrument. "Talon," Daxon asked, eyes gleaming. "You ready?" Talon Royce's hands hovered above his console, every weapon locked. The Revenant carried enough firepower to shame ships 10 times its size. "Just say the word, Commander." Above and around them, the enemy fleet encircled their position like vultures over prey. The Revenant sat perfectly in their crosshairs, vulnerable, or so it seemed. Now Drexler barked. All units, fire. 9 warships launched everything they had. Searing lances of energy cut across the void like divine wrath. The stars disappeared behind a storm of light. So much energy, it could have pulverized a moon. But Daxon's crew didn't flinch. Lyric moved like a maestro, rerouting their targeting arrays mid-burst. Half the blasts twisted off course and slammed into Ontherian hulls. The result was chaos. 1 warship took fire from 3 of its allies. Its shields collapsed in seconds, its reactor overloading into a fireball. 2 more were struck directly. Their protective bubbles popped like soap, and then came the detonation, steel, crystal, and bone vanishing into vacuum. The lances that did hit the Revenant, they were welcomed. Rhea's armor plating absorbed the blasts like sunlight on solar wings. The ship pulsed with power, growing stronger as it fed off the enemy's own fury. High Marshal Drexler screamed, "They're hitting our own ships." "What's happening?" His tactical chief was pale. Something is interfering with our guidance networks. They're hijacking the system. Aboard the Revenant, Daxon stood calmly. His crew moved like dancers through fire, each in sync, each playing their part. "Talon," he said, "start with the wounded." Talon fired. The plasma lances struck the fractured enemy ships first. Their once beautiful hulls shattered like frozen glass, detonating in brilliant silence. No distress signals. No escape. "Sarah," Daxon called. "Bring us about. Point us at the flagship." The maneuver was impossible for any normal warship. But the Revenant wasn't normal. It twisted through the stars like a blade, repositioning with impossible grace, dodging enemy fire like a duelist in a ballroom. The remaining 6 Ontherian vessels tried to regroup, but Daxon wasn't letting up. Lyric. Blind them. Hit their comms. Lyric unleashed a digital plague. Viruses crafted in underground labs, designed to rot through Ontherian fleetnet. Suddenly, they were deaf to each other. Commanders shouted into dead channels. No one responded. They were isolated. Leaders stranded in their own silence. "Status?" Daxon asked. Kai nodded. "Transmitting live. Every outpost, every Terran fleet, every colony, they're watching." Daxon's lips curled into a grin. This wasn't just a battle. It was history unfolding live. This wasn't just war. It was a proclamation burned into the stars. Humanity would no longer kneel. Anyone who dared cross Earth's path would meet the same fate as the broken fleet now drifting across the black. Talon fired again. Another Ontherian cruiser ruptured into flames, its crystal spine curling like a dying animal. The flash of its demise lit the faces of the Revenant's crew. Victory was in reach. But Daxonvire knew the hardest blow hadn't yet been struck. The crown of embers still remained. The flagship. The monster. High Marshal Drexler wasn't finished. "Sarah?" Daxon asked. She didn't turn away from her display. "Their command ship is arming its primary cannon. Energy levels are peaking." He stared at the beast on his screen. It was a stunning creation. Elegant, symmetrical, and soulless. A killer wrapped in glass and light. Its beauty wouldn't save it. "Stations," Daxon called. "Prepare for the final phase. Let's show them the price of laughing at us." The crown of embers floated through the battlefield like a ghost emperor, silent, alone, encircled by the ashes of its once invincible fleet. 8 Ontherian vessels were gone. 3 limp escorts lingered behind, afraid to advance. Their courage had melted away with their allies. On its bridge, Drexler stood frozen. His eyes, 4 of them, surveyed the wreckage. This fleet had crushed empires, reduced civilizations to rubble. And now it was stardust. All because of one Terran ship. "All systems are failing across the network," muttered his comms officer. A young soldier, trembling, spoke up. "Should we retreat, sir?" Drexler's fists clenched so hard his gloves tore. He was the butcher of Karsith, the breaker of Nera Prime. He could not, would not be remembered as the commander who fled from a single human warship. No, he growled. Power up the Annihilator. The planet crackers, sir? If I can't outfight them, Drexer hissed, I'll take them with me. Back aboard the Revenant, Daxon watched the death machine wake. Its core flared, pulling energy from every conduit. Its hull pulsed with violence. If that thing fired, it wouldn't just destroy a ship, it would crack a world open. Rhea, he said, his voice low. She nodded, her readings flooding with impossible numbers. If they hit us, even with full shields, we're gone. He had counted on this. Cornered predators struck hardest. Sarah. Time. Just under 2 minutes, Commander. He looked at every face on his bridge. They had danced through fire. But this was the coin toss of fate. Talon, Daxon asked, do we have juice for the Ether Lance? The crew went quiet. The Lance, humanity's deepest shadow project. Never tested in battle. Never fired under pressure. Talon's fingers ran the diagnostics. We'll need more power to push it past threshold. Daxon smiled. The Ontherians were about to give them exactly that. Rhea, he said, prepare to drain every jewel of their fury. Every surge they throw, catch it, bend it, feed it to the Lance. She smirked. Let them scream. We'll drink their wrath. Let's welcome their wrath, Rhea said, her fingers dancing across glowing panels. The Revenant's hull shimmered. Absorption nodes lit up like stars igniting. The ship pulsed with gathering might, the armor flexing as it prepared to drink from the enemy's fire. Ready, Commander, she said. The more they burn, the brighter we blaze. On the bridge of the Crown of Embers, Drexer stood before a weapon designed to fracture worlds. The Annihilator cannon had annihilated cities, continents, entire civilizations. Now it would be pointed at a single vessel that had humiliated him. Unleash it, he commanded. The cannon ignited with a scream of unnatural light. A beam of destruction, wide as a freighter lane and luminous as a newborn star, tore across the void. It was a weapon that could silence moons. And now it was aimed at the Revenant. The shot struck. For a heartbeat, Daxon's ship vanished, swallowed by brilliance so intense, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Ontherian ships watched in silence, convinced they had ended the nightmare. But as the glare faded, they saw it. The Revenant still stood, not shattered, not damaged, glowing. It had feasted on the impossible, absorbed the fury of a dying empire, and grown stronger. Unthinkable, Drexer whispered. His ultimate weapon had only fed the beast. Inside the Revenant, Rhea's monitors flashed warnings as power surged through the systems. Commander, she said breathlessly, we're topped off. We're overflowing. The Ether Lance is ready. Daxon stepped toward the viewport. The enemy flagship hovered there, still majestic, still terrifying. The crown jewel of a once feared Armada. But beauty meant nothing now. Zeke, Daxon said, open the line. Zeke's fingers moved swiftly, broadcasting to all hostile ships. Daxon faced the camera, his voice composed, his words like judgment carved in steel. High Marshal Drexer, he began. You crossed our line. You came here to dominate, to humiliate, to remind us of your power. You called us relics, garbage. You thought we were prey. Drexer's breath caught as the human's eyes stared through the screen. You were wrong. We let you believe in our weakness because your pride made you blind. Now, Daxon nodded to Talon. Now you face the consequences. Talon reached for the trigger only he had ever trained to touch. The Ether Lance was more than a weapon. It was a singularity wrapped in starlight. A pulse of sheer annihilation birthed in secret laboratories deep beneath Earth's crust. Firing, Talon said almost reverently. The beam that erupted from the Revenant made every other weapon look like a sparkler. It wasn't a line of energy. It was a rift in existence. It screamed across the void, struck the Crown of Embers, and went through it like it wasn't there. The mighty flagship buckled. Its crystal limbs shattered. Its core folded in on itself. And then, like a dying god, it erupted. A star was born, and the Empire's heart died with it. The crown of embers, once the pride of Arthurian might, was no more. One moment it shimmered like a divine relic, the next it disintegrated into cascading light. Gas, radiation, and fractured glory spread across the void where a Titan had stood. High Marshal Drexer, his legacy, his crew, erased in the blink of an eye. They never saw the end coming. The remaining 3 Arthurian escorts didn't wait. Their engines flared, and they vanished into the depths of space like hunted shadows, fleeing the very ghosts they had tried to mock. The ship they had dismissed as rusted refuse had torn through their elite with ease. They had mistaken Revenant for junk. Now they knew it was a wolf in Steel's clothing. Commander Daxon Vire watched them disappear, expression unreadable. No celebration, just a slow breath. The mission was complete. His people were safe. "They're gone," Zeke reported from the comms panel. "No sign of pursuit. And New Bastion is clear. Send word to the colony," Daxon said. "Tell them the storm's passed." "Already did, Commander," Zeke replied with a grin. "They're asking if we need backup." Daxon let out a low laugh. "Tell them we've got it handled." Chris tapped a few keys, eyebrows raised. "I'm getting transmission requests from Arthurian vessels across the region. They're asking for safe exit from human territory." "Let them go," Daxon said. "But make it clear, any Arthurian ship that sets foot in our systems again will vanish like the last ones." "Acknowledged," Chris said, his voice hard with pride. Rhea turned to her console. "Course heading, sir?" Daxon took his seat again. The bridge hummed with calm purpose now, as if the ship itself was settling its pulse after a fight. Around him, his crew sat with quiet intensity, battle-hardened and resolute. They had done what no one thought possible. One ship, one crew, an entire armada dismantled in less than an hour. "Set a heading for Sol," Daxon said. "I think Earth will want the full story." The Revenant pivoted slowly, its hull still glowing with the aftermath of stolen power. Behind it floated the drifting bones of an empire. Ahead, the stars welcomed something new. Daxon stared into the infinite black, thoughtful. This wasn't just a victory. It was a proclamation. Humanity had spent centuries as the underdog, primitive, outgunned, overlooked by every advanced species that filled the void between stars. They'd been dismissed, mocked, colonized, but no longer. This battle would echo like thunder through every system and council hall. The age of human meekness was over. From now on, enemies would think twice before underestimating Earth. From now on, those who judged by appearances would do so with fear. The galaxy had seen a broken ship, but it had faced humanity's most cunning minds, most courageous hearts, and most devastating creation. And it had learned. The stars belonged to Earth now, not by entitlement, but by proof. And those who dared challenge that fact would remember the day they mistook a legend for scrap metal. They mocked us until we became their nightmare. If this story lit a fire in your soul, hit that like button like you're launching the Nova Cannon. Subscribe and join the front line, because the war for the stars has just begun. And tell me in the comments, if you were in command of the Revenant, what would your next move be?